Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this month's Digging In with the TPS Southern Region at Middle Tennessee State University. We're really excited to have you join us for the second in this kind of relaunching of our Digging In series. So a couple of quick housekeeping things as we get started. For those of you guys who are joining us live, of course, keep your mics muted unless you're answering questions. And be sure to rename yourself so we know who we're chatting with in the chat room. And of course, be sure to interact with us as much as possible. We love when we have folks to join us live as we get to make this kind of a more engaging experience. But for those of you who can't and are watching this later, we hope that you enjoy this. And again, hopefully at some point you will be able to join us for a live recording of the webinar. You can follow along with information from our newsletters, links to the presentations that we're doing in this webinar series, and other helpful resources in the TPS Teachers Network in our TPS Southern Region group. And so there's a QR code and an album link here. And this actually works even if you are not, if you do not have an account for the TPS Teachers Network, you can still access this publicly. So definitely check that out if you're looking for some of the resources, especially some of the presentations that are used during this series. So with our housekeeping stuff taken care of, I'm going to turn things over to Stacy, who's going to kick us off talking a little bit about what our focus is for the month.
Thanks, Kira. Well, we still don't quite have a unified theme that we're pursuing for this month, so I wanted to start off by just talking about October, the month, as a theme. So I, of course, went on the Library of Congress website to look at some October-themed primary sources, and now I'm going to share them with you. So here is an oldie but a goodie that we have used before with teachers and just with all sorts of things. So this is one of the WPA posters that is kind of promoting a community program of reading and using your local library. So there were a lot of these type of kind of public service posters that were created in the 1930s. This one is, I think, really appealing to students because it's a little bit spooky and it's just got really engaging graphics. And it's got that wonderful jack-o'-lantern made out of the O of the October. And so I absolutely had to share that one with you today. Now, one thing you will notice if you look at any primary sources in the Library of Congress website right now at this time is that there is this red bar across the top that is just, informing you that we are in the temporary shutdown of the federal government that started on October the 1st. So the Library of Congress buildings are closed, so they're not, there's nobody there right now. If you were to use the Ask a Librarian function, our educational outreach staff that we talk to at the library are not able to communicate it with us at this time, but the TPS Southern Region is still going on business as usual. So we are still here. The shutdown is thankfully not affecting our operations. And we're still working with our partners and we're still maintaining the TPS Southern Region website at this time. But for most of your needs, if you're just looking things up on the Library of Congress website, it's still there. It's still fine. It might be a little bit slower than usual because their servers are swamped, but it's still working, so you can still find stuff on it. Let's look at another example of an October-themed primary source. So this one is probably from the old world, somewhere in Europe, because it's dated to the 16th century. And so we're looking at, I'm going to blow it up, a village scene in October. And I can't really read the words down there right now, but it looks like it might be Italian. That's my guess. And so, you might want to show this to people and be like, okay, what do you notice here that seems like something fall themed to you? It looks like maybe there's some leaves starting the still on the trees. Um, one thing that I really hope you'll notice is that scorpion hanging up in the middle of the sky. So I want to ask those of you who are here today to pop into the chat box. What is that and why? Why is there a scorpion there? Anyone want to speak up? Anyone want to read me the chat box?
So, is it in the middle of a sun? Is that what that circular?
I have a feeling it's just like a little bit of an artist halo to make it appear more clearly. That is my guess.
Okay.
So I just
Someone,
looked it up. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
You looked it
yeah, I was
up.
gonna
You're
say someone
supposed
had
to be
mentioned.
using your
Well,
observational
it's
powers.
not. I'm not looking up. I wanted to know when Scorpio season was
Ah, very
because
good.
Ashley said something in the chat about astrology. So Scorpio season is October 23rd through November
Very
21st.
good.
And that's when the sun transits the astrological sign uh, to Scorpio. So
You're right. And
maybe.
I knew that because I'm a Scorpio. So it starts at the end of October. Yeah, so that's kind of interesting and just kind of shows a bit how just kind of mainstream basic astrology was during like kind of early modern Europe, right before the founding of America, and they brought that with them. But you also see these barrels and these vats, so that's kind of talking about harvest time and also just the general kind of countryside scene here. So let's look at an example from, oops, America. I've got two Courier and Ives, or maybe just Courier, lithographs showing some American country life scenes. And so here we have a couple gentlemen returning home and showing off their hunting trophies to a very grateful wife and children. So, I think that points to, October as a hunting season. Um, and so the other one is another example of American country life in an October afternoon. I'll make that a little bit larger. So here you can see they are gathering the hay into stacks. So that's part of the harvest, I'm guessing. We've got, oh, a lovely house in the background. I believe this is somewhere up in New York, or at least that's where it would have been published. We have, it looks like it's still kind of warmish weather because the children do not have a lot of clothing on. The leaves are still on the trees. So, any thoughts about this one that anyone wants to toss in?
Well, it's interesting that both of these, again, the leaves and the foliage does not look very fall-esque.
Right. I thought
Um,
that too. Maybe that's more of a November thing, and this is like the last bit of the season where the trees have not dumped their leaves yet, and everything's starting to kind of close up for the fall season.
well,
You
Layla makes a good point is that they almost both have a southern feel to them, and so
yeah,
depending on where you're at in the South, you don't really get fall colors until much later. So maybe that is,
Yeah, they felt like
that's true too.
Louisiana or like
yeah,
Florida or something like that to me.
yeah, like deep South.
Yeah, it does kind of look like that to us. We might be a little biased about that. There's no clue in the bibliographic information of where it might be depicting. It's just that it was published in New York. And but it is during the 1850s, that kind of pre-Civil War plantation at its height era. And but just kind of an idyllic um kind of family life scene there. So let's look at another. These are some photographs from, oops, excuse me, some collections at the Library of Congress. So this photograph, it looks like it was taken in like maybe the 80s or 90s, but it was taken in 1954. So this is a really, I think, professionally done color photograph, and it's part of this collection at the Library of Congress that is depicting these kind of farm scenes from Coatesville, Pennsylvania. And so you can definitely see here that the trees are starting to change color up in Pennsylvania in October. Another scene from Maine, this picture was taken in 2017. So even Maine is not in full color in October. But you can start to see some of the colors spreading. And here we have, I think this photo is from the 90s. This is from the kind of folk life in West Virginia collection. But this right here really looks like fall to me because pumpkins. And you have that kind of very traditional kind of gathered corn stalks and the hay bales and the gourds out there. So yeah, 1996. So. Yeah, so I just thought that I would share some ways that some of the primary source photographs of the Library of Congress depict the month of October and how we just kind of how that may or may not fit in our mind with what we expect to see at this time of year and what we're really looking forward to because of course we're all just so happy that it's not summer anymore and very, very hot. It's starting to be less hot, so we're very grateful. And so, one more thing that I wanted to think about in terms of, okay, so what's going on in October is, of course, I went to Today in History, and Monday is Columbus Day. And so, there is a good t Today in History article about Columbus Day because the Library of Congress actually has some really great primary sources. You wouldn't think about it because that's from the 15th century, but some really great sources about Christopher Columbus, including the very rare copy of a Book of Privileges that was created for him to kind of justify why he was allowed to do what he did. And there's a whole video about that, and you can see it in the library's treasured possessions, etc. So there's a lot of great primary sources that you can use to just kind of remind people or remind students of, okay, so why, why do we still talk about Christopher Columbus today? And then, of course, the whole idea of the celebration of Columbus Day and how that got started in the United States, and it has had its own history of ups and downs. And so this is just a good little article that discusses that. And if you, let's see. So I was trying to think, oh, today is October 9th, and it was just like what the founding of Yale University or something. I was like, okay, whatever. But yesterday was the anniversary of the Great Chicago Fire. And but before that, there was actually a fire in Michigan and Wisconsin. And so this tells about that story. And then right after that, the Great Chicago Fire erupted just next door in Illinois. And so I guess conditions were so widespread in the Midwest that these other ones got eclipsed by the Chicago fire, of course, but that it actually caused a lot more damage than we think. So this is a really nice kind of rundown of that story. So yeah, those are all of my October themed things that I wanted to cover. And so now I'm going to go to our newsletter for today, or for this month. And so our newsletter, I'm going to make it a little bit larger and before I go through some of the other things in this newsletter, we're going to start with the bottom of page one with this feature that Layla found in the Teachers Network. So I'm actually going to stop sharing. And do you want me, do you want to share your screen, Layla, or do you want me to just keep this up?
No,
Okay.
I'll share.
Okay.
I have the links already
Excellent.
pulled up for what I need. Thank you, though.
Excellent. So I'm going to turn it over to Layla, and then I'll be back later.
All right. Hi, everyone. So today I wanted to share with you just a few really interesting links that are all connected to Japanese internment and something that we initially found posted on the TPS Teachers Network. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay. So this is let me move my black bar. Hold on. it's going to be in the way. Hide. There we go. Got it. Okay, so this is the network page called The Student as Historian, and it's really encouraging students to take the lead in the research, take the lead in um, just delving deeper into whatever topic you have there. And this lesson in particular is called Evaluating Historical Sources, Japanese American Incarceration during World War II. So this link Elizabeth has to share in the chat box. And if you are not a part of the TPS Teachers Network, you would have to make an account or log in. But after that, this link should take you directly to this page and again, this post. So the lesson here we're working from, I'll show you the actual lesson plan in just a second. But it's evaluating historical sources, specifically looking at documentaries as sources. So I'm going to show you two videos in a minute. I'm just going to show you the first 2.5 minutes of each one. We're not going to watch the entire video, I promise. And if you can't hear my sound, please tell me. So this lesson is really pushing teachers to have students dig into why videos were created. How reliable are they? The two videos we'll be looking at, one's from 19, it was made in 1943, or it was produced in 1943, but the compiled video was shot in 1941 and 42. It's narrated by a government official, and it's talking about Japanese internment and Japanese American internment during World War II. The next video is a documentary made in 2014 with survivors of Japanese internment. So just as you're going through this and watching the videos in a moment, I just want you to think about, and I'll repeat this, who made the video, right? Why is it being made? And which one you think will be a reliable source. So we'll come back to those questions in just a second. I do want to shift to show you the lesson plan here because it's really in depth. It's from Uprooted. Uprooted is a traveling exhibit from Oregon, produced by the Oregon Cultural Heritage Commission. So this is the lesson. There are, I think, two total. This is one of two, or two of two, excuse me. And it has the teacher's guide, the goals, all the materials linked, including the two videos that we're going to watch today. And it also has some extension activities, things along those lines. And it links you to the Uprooted website and pictures from the traveling exhibit as well, and oral histories, things like that. So before we get started, I'm going to just ask you to consider.
Actually, Layla,
Yeah,
I want to be able to, and this is something that I should have, I should have had a conversation with you before about it. Because the people who are with us today can watch these, but because of the way YouTube operates, we will not be able to show these documentary clips in the
okay,
YouTube recording that'll be posted to our website later on. So I'm going to pause
okay,
the recording for the
okay.
space of these videos. So if you could, though, just kind of reiterate where they can find these so that those who
Yes,
are watching later can find them and
yeah,
then watch them, easily, even if they can't watch them through this particular episode of Digging In.
yes. And you can see my screen, right? Because I got rid of my black bar,
Yes.
but now I can't see where anything is. So this is on YouTube. If you want to find this after the fact, after this video, the lesson plan here has it linked in the materials. So it is the second video, Japanese relocation, and it's available at Internet Archive and at YouTube.com. So let me see if I can pull this up. Oh, we can watch it through this. Will this be okay?
Uh,
No.
is this the 2014 one?
This is the 1943 one.
Okay, well, this is
It
public
says it's
domain, so
public
this,
domain.
yes, this one should be fine.
Okay.
I
All
will
right, cool.
I will leave it rolling and not
Okay.
pause.
So just before we get started, in the chat, just take a few seconds and tell me, of the videos, the 1943-ish video or the 2014 video, one's coming from a government office, and another is coming from survivors recorded a documentary after the fact with oral histories. What do you think is going to be a more reliable historical source? So just in the chat box real quick, take like 10 seconds, give me an idea. And as we are thinking about this, um, I'm going to go ahead and play this again. I'm going to stop it after about 2.5 minutes, and then we'll watch the other video for about 2.5 minutes.
Can you share your sound?
Was it not sharing? Okay,
Oh,
hold
I can
on.
see the video. I can't hear it.
Okay, let me pull up my audio.
Well, there's a way on the bottom taskbar to share your sound.
Yeah, I'm looking right now. Can you remind me of how to do that?
Under more?
Can you hear that? Okay. Share computer sound. See it. Got it. All right, let me start.
Japanese.
Thank you. I took out my headphones because I was thinking that would work, but obviously not.
When the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, our west coast became a potential combat zone. Living in that zone were more than 100,000 persons of Japanese ancestry, two-thirds of them American citizens, one-third aliens. We knew that some among them were potentially dangerous. Most were loyal. But no one knew what would happen among this concentrated population if Japanese forces should try to invade our shores. Military authorities therefore determined that all of them, citizens and aliens alike, would have to move. This picture tells how the mass migration was accomplished. Neither the Army nor the War Relocation Authority relished the idea of taking men, women, and children from their homes, their shops, and their farms. So the military and civilian agencies alike determined to do the job as a democracy should, with real consideration for the people involved. First attention was given to the problems of sabotage and espionage. Now, here at San Francisco, for example, convoys were being made up within sight of possible Axis agents. There were more Japanese in Los Angeles than in any other area. At nearby San Pedro, houses and hotels occupied almost exclusively by Japanese were within a stone's throw of a naval air base, shipyards, oil wells. Japanese fishermen had every opportunity to watch the movement of our ships. Japanese farmers were living close to vital aircraft plants. So as a first step, all Japanese were required to move from critical areas such as these. But of course, this limited evacuation was a solution to only part of the problem. The larger problem, the uncertainty of what would happen among these people in case of a Japanese invasion, still remained. That is why the commanding general of the Western Defense Command determined that all Japanese within the coastal area should move inland.
Okay, so that is the first video, and as you were watching that, yeah, the music is kind of eerie, and it gives me Twilight Zone vibes. So thinking about this video, who made the video, right? What's the purpose of the video? And what are the audio and visual elements used? And you all kind of hit on that as we're going through. So thinking about this video specifically in 1943 and in 2025. Would this video be effective in 1943? And would this video be effective in 2025? Judging from the comments, no, right? But just thinking about who made it, the purpose, and really how are they drawing you in? Okay. And just consider again, because we'll come back to this question, how each video is a product of its time. The next video, I'm going to show you just 2.5 minutes from this one. This is from Uprooted. This video, this video specifically, now after watching this video, let's think about when it was made, first of all, and how it is different from the video that we saw produced in 1942-43 by the US government. Just in the chat box for a second, or if you want to unmute yourself, think about what the video's purpose was, audio and visual elements and how they differ, the effectiveness of the video, how can we connect it to other events within American history specifically. Yeah, good. So which one, after watching these two videos, do you think is one that students will relate to more?
Well, I think the older film, just the methodology in which it is shot and the imagery, like that's going to feel more distant to them. Whereas
Mhm.
this one, there's color images. This one has a more of a contemporary feel, and so I think that part of it will be something that students will either connect with or not. So that's something to think about again when you think about these, because again, a 1943 video seems like something that's, ancient history to them.
Right. And the reliability of it, because we're thinking it's coming from a government source, is very interesting to kind of dig into a little bit more as well. Government sources versus oral histories and personal testimonies or accounts.
Well,
Um,
that brings up. Oh, go ahead, Stacy.
no,
No, I was going to say that I like the way I think it would engage the students, the way it is an oral history kind of structure for the more recent documentary, because young people might be familiar with, talking to their grandmothers at holidays or something like that. And the fact that the more recent documentary really highlights women and children, whereas the 1943 one is talking about probably, largely male adult kind of populations that might spy for the Japanese government. And so I think that the people are more relatable because they're so obviously non-combatants in the documentary from 2014.
anything else before I go on? Um, okay. So in the lesson plan, they just ask that you consider, or they have these questions to consider as well. Thinking about how this video connects with your students. So how is this video a product of its time? Does it rely on fact or opinion? And really, I think a big one for this is it's a great way to pull in other resources beyond or in addition to traditional text to really back up um, sharing the history of Japanese American internment in the United States during the Second World War. So just a few extra links that I wanted to share with y'all from this. This is the Uprooted website, and just a quick overview. Uprooted, this is a traveling exhibit titled Uprooted Japanese American Farm Labor Camps During World War II, and it was produced by the Oregon Cultural Heritage Commission. It features 45 images taken by Farm Security Administration photographers or photographer, excuse me, in Oregon and Idaho communities in the summer of 1942. There are also 3 text panels included in the exhibit, and they have that short oral history video that we watched the first 2.5 minutes of. So this video specifically and this resource, this lesson idea, this website, this traveling exhibit, they examine farm labor camps during the Second World War, and the use of Japanese Americans as labor sources, specifically in the sugar beet industry. So later on in the video, they show like the process of the sugar beets and picking them up and topping them and everything else. So in addition to this website, I also just wanted to share a few other resources compiled by the Library of Congress. This is a lesson plan from the Library of Congress, Japanese American internment, Fear Itself. So another lesson plan you could build off of with primary sources. And then we have this primary source set from the Library of Congress on Japanese American internment with great documents that you can pull in. We even saw some of these within that second video, right? Saw some of the posters or the public service announcements. And then there's also a collection of photographs, Ansel Adams photography featuring Japanese American internment at Manzanar from the Library of Congress. So lots of great resources here, and these are all linked in our newsletter as well. So any anything that I showed you will also be linked on that newsletter, whether it's in the lesson plan or in the newsletter itself. Thank you. I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Graham now.
All right, thanks, Leila. I just want to show you kind of building on that theme a little bit, but in as a coincidence. So we wanted to feature one of the projects that we have funded now that our kind of cycle of funding is almost complete, and we can really start bringing attention to the work that's being done that's currently being funded by the Southern region. And the very first project that we awarded a subgrant to is at Warner University in Florida. And it's a project called Stories Lives Tell, Leaps and Bounds. And the Leaps and Bounds stands for, and you can kind of see that down here, learning engagement around primary sources builds our understanding. And so this is a group of social studies, or this is a social studies methods teacher at Warner University who's creating booklets aimed at elementary school students that really dig into analyzing primary sources, both images and texts. And so that's really hard when you get to like the younger learners, taking them through that process. But they've created some wonderful things I want to show you. So we link to their website. If you go to the TPS Southern Region page, go to projects by state and go to Florida, and then you'll see under Warner University a link to their page, their TPS work. So they have created a first round of booklets for a previous grant from the Eastern region, and now they're creating another round of 4 booklets. And so you can actually download 2 of their earlier booklets here. One is the Dade Battlefield booklet, and one is Explorations into the Space Program. And so I just want to take a moment to show you kind of what these look like. And they're not that long. This one's only 28 pages. You can print it out. It's meant to be, printed in a hard copy, and not necessarily, it's not embedded with a bunch of links. And it just talks students through like, what is perspective? And, what do you think each of these people might feel? And then, okay, so what do you want to learn? And then, okay, what is your own perspective, and how is that affecting your interpretation of these other people's perspectives from the past? And so using a text, which is not easy to do with fourth graders, I mean it, they are using original language, but they're using vocabulary as support, and they're excerpting it to make it a more manageable length. So the kind of green shaded boxes are for historical context, and then they take students through bits and pieces of the text, and then they pause in a lot of places and ask kind of comprehension questions as well as analysis questions. And this is just so well done. We were just so taken by these booklets that we were happy to be funding another round of them. And so looking at the explorations into the space program, this really brings in a lot of literacy, uh, so they're, of course, analyzing according to the Library of Congress teaching with primary sources methods of observations, reflections, and questions. But then they're also looking at quotes from, depictions of astronauts, quotes from astronauts, and really beautiful quotes that really quite, talk about our humanity and our relationship to the Earth. And then they even bring in poetry and analyze a poem, which I thought was something that I don't normally hear about in context of learning about space and astronauts. And so it's just very nicely done. And so they've already selected the topics that they're going to be focusing on for this next round. And this, by the way, this article on page 2 is a Q&A with Dr. Lori Bolden at Warner, who is the PI on this project. And she's talking about how, she went to a teacher institute at the Library of Congress and she just started talking to people. And they're like, well, you should apply for a grant with your idea. And so she did. And then every time she would kind of move along to a different phase of her project, somebody would be like, you should write a grant proposal for that. And so she's talking about her challenges. She's worked with science, and so she talked about the challenge of working in social studies at the elementary level, but how meaningful it's been because primary sources allow you to do that and make all those connections between science and literature and social studies. And so, her advice is to, absolutely go for it and see what's out there and, use TPS as a support. And so she sent in 2 images to go along with this little article. And so one of them I just love. It's Katsuo and Masuko Kamiya as children. And these are 2 children who grew up on the Yamato Colony in Florida, which is the subject of one of the booklets that they are currently creating. And I had never heard about this colony, probably because it's not something that people outside of Florida learn. But I'm going to tell you about it because it actually ties into Japanese American internment a little bit at the end, just by coincidence. But so the Yamato colony was a business venture. There were a couple, after Japan was opened up to the West in the 19th century and they brought an end to the shogunate, and it kind of opened them up to a lot of westernization. And during the Meiji Empire, a lot of kind of, the more educated families in Japan then, or even the ones who were not as elite and from agricultural backgrounds, they immigrated to the United States and other places. And so one of them who went to college in New York was recruited by some Florida businessmen to come to Florida and start an agricultural experimentation colony because they were hoping that they'd bring like Eastern methods of agriculture and maybe they could do some silk production or grow tea or stuff like that. And of course, that was not as successful in the type of soil that Southern Florida has. But Joe Sakai was one of the earliest colonists, and he went back to Japan to recruit other young men to come over. And then they would, marry women in Japan and bring them over to start families in Florida. And so, like between this is like the very first years of the 20th century. And for about 30, 40 years, you had this colony, this very small colony of Japanese, well, their children were citizens and they were, Japanese immigrants who experimented and they were actually very successful growing pineapples and tomatoes and some other vegetables. And of course, they experienced racism along the way, but at the same time, they got a lot of support from local businessmen and local politicians. And in fact, there at the same time that laws were passed in California that prevented Japanese immigrants from owning land, that did not happen in Florida, and Florida actually tried to get those California Japanese immigrants to come to Florida because they're like, well, you can own land here. And so, yeah, it was not just that they were farming land, they were actually owning land, even though it was kind of small plots. And this is southern Florida, just north of Miami. It's like between Delray Beach and Boca Raton. So, like, I had to, of course, look in Google Maps. And so, if you look in that part of the Florida coast and you zoom in, you can see the word Yamato as a place name kind of right there. And so, I have it pinned the Murakami Museum that's named after one of the last colonists who died in 1976. But the colony kind of fizzled out. A lot of them lost money during the bank busts of the 20s and 30s, and there was during World War II, the few that were still left, they were not specifically sent to internment camps, but some of them had already moved away from the colony and moved out west and were sent to internment camps from their new Western homes. Like one of them, I think, was visiting his daughter in California and got rounded up and sent to Manzanar while he was there. And so they did get affected by that. And the ones that stayed behind, even though they weren't interned, there was like restrictions placed on their movement and their assets were frozen and stuff like that. But the one of the last survivors, George Murakami, has he donated the rest of, last bits of his land for this beautiful Japanese garden. And so you can still go and visit it today. But anyway, so that's going to be the subject of one of their future booklets. And I just thought that was a really interesting piece of history that I had never heard about. Because when you think about Japanese American, immigration, you usually think kind of West Coast. But here is a colony right here it can't get more eastern than the eastern coast of Florida. So that's kind of some of our random bits that you'll find in our newsletter. But now we're going to go and highlight our the focus lesson idea for the newsletter. And this was created by one of our graduate research assistants for this fall, Ashley Townsend. And so this is her very first debut on the Digging In webinars. So everybody give her a warm welcome and support. And I'm going to turn it over to you, Ashley.
Hi. Yes, so me and Elizabeth created the newsletter this month on Lewis Hines. Sorry, I'm trying to do two things at one time.
It takes a few times before
There we
you get
go.
to where you can do three things at once. So,
So we focused on Lewis Hines' child labor photos from the National Child Labor Committee. And this was really interesting to study. One thing that drew me to this topic was just how versatile the photos are and how they can be used. They can be used for younger grades in high school and world history, and they are just something I believe that children can really connect with as well because they're about children. Okay, so my first question is, what was your first job? I don't know if I can see the chat box.
yeah. So, kind of along with the things that you have in here. So we got babysitting and lawn mowing, uh, and umpiring. First officially tax job as a librarian, pet sitting. So, a good range.
Wow, that is a range. Who said umpiring?
That's
Layla.
Layla.
So she
I
may have
love
gotten kind
it.
of as dirty as those breaker boys.
I believe it. Um, so the when we're looking at child labor, um, in for centuries in the United States, it was considered a normal thing. Like, if you wanted to contribute to your house, you were expected, if you were a child, to contribute to the household. You got a job, you worked. Um, so, and there was primary schools, which were compulsory or mandatory-ish, but every state and really every family had different rules concerning if their children actually went to school or not, and how many hours or how many months varied. So really, really inconsistent schooling. There were also inconsistent factory laws. So it varied by state, it varied by if the family wanted to send their kids to the factory. Some factories just didn't have any laws concerning child labor. So it was just very, a lot up in the air. Um, so also during, let me back up. So the National Labor Committee got started in officially in 1904. However, before this, starting around the 1870s, committees were already forming to help get reform for child labor's laws. Like, the Men's Working Party wanted to bar, I think it was anybody younger than 14 from entering their party. And so people are fighting this, but nothing's really happening. Some rules get passed, but mostly it's during the late mid 1800s to early 1900s. You see a lot of committees forming, and the National Child Labor Committee was actually formed by a man named Edgar Murphy, who was a preacher from Alabama. So we have our southern regions in there. And he um, mixed with a chapter in New York of the Labor Committee to create a national one. So that's how that scope became so broad. So Lewis Hines is an interesting person. I couldn't really find any information on him before 1901, but he moved to New York, began teaching at the Ethical and Cultural School, and here he started getting his class out to the tenement housing and taking pictures. So that's kind of how he got started with the social justice and photography. In 1904, he photographed immigrants coming from Ellis Island, and this is how he got the attention of the NCLC and was hired on around 1908. Goodness gracious. So they hired him to take these photographs of industries that employed children around the country. And his findings led to the Keaton-Owen Act, which was one of the first laws protecting women and children in the workplace, but it was found unconstitutional 2 years later. And really, there are no national laws until the Fair Labor Act in 1933, which put in place the 8-hour workday. So these are some of Hines posters. From everything I've seen, he made these, but they're definitely his photographs. So when we talk about these photos, what he used them for was power of perspective. He wanted people to have emotional reactions to these photos, right? So this is an exhibit panel that he made. What do you guys think of this? Do you want to share some thoughts, feelings, emotions from this poster?
They deliberately chose two contrasting pictures. I'm not so sure those children would look all that different if it weren't for their facial expressions. Their clothes look pretty similar.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, if I was a little kid and had to work in the mill all day long, I'd probably look that unhappy too. So,
Yeah,
But the mill
yeah,
child, that's the look my kid gives me when I ask her to do anything around the house. So,
yeah. I mean, he definitely knew what he was doing. This guy on
yes.
this guy, the normal child. Let's just start there. He's well fed, like he looks happy. And the mill child has like dark, baggy eyes and just looks extremely exhausted.
Well,
He's
I
standing
really,
like a tired old man.
He
Look,
is.
look at how he's standing.
but I like their point that even if they don't get injured, they're still very negatively affected.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, for sure. The loss of education, I love the language of all these posters too. It's very vivid. Okay, so when we think about child labor, how am I doing on time?
Um, well, I would say you could take another 10 minutes.
Okay, awesome. I can do 10 minutes. What words and images or concepts come to mind?
so unsafe working conditions, low pay. I think exploitation is one that comes to mind for me. Uh, Jobs adults are too big for. So yeah, we think about like the
Mm,
meal pictures or hosiery. Like where can we stick little hands that big hands can't go? Um, yeah, the dirty conditions. I feel like a lot of like the some of the images that I really think about in this collection also speak to child labor in immigrant communities, and so you also think about kind of socioeconomic status,
mm,
and how that plays a role in, what children needed to work in order to be able to support their families. And that,
yeah,
of course, doesn't even begin to touch children's work in agriculture, which is another huge story. So.
yeah. Those are all really good points. So for I have some pictures that I'm gonna show in just a second, but for those pictures, I really want us to think about this is a whole wheel. We're only gonna focus on two. So we're gonna really focus on the connect and the wonder. So really thinking about observing the photos, observing the primary sources. What do you observe? What do you think you know? And then the wonder, what do you want to find out or make predictions? Um, so the first photo is this one. So how can we observe and reflect and question this photograph? And you guys can chime in.
Well, first off, we observe one only one small person and several large persons. So the in that way, the child really stands out. And
Yeah, he's selling news. Sorry, I saw Layla's comment. He's selling
oh
newspapers.
yeah.
He's a
Yeah.
newsboy.
The newsy. Look at his little pants.
So you see that this is not ex is this it's sepia tone, right? That's what
Yes.
it is. And so it's not black and white, it's sepia tone. It's a photograph, right? Um he's a little newsy selling newspapers. And then we have Heinz's caption at the top. So then that adds a whole nother layer because not only is he a newsie, when we turn to the caption, we see that this is, I thought about that too, Layla.
Oh, wouldn't it be great to find this street and put this picture
I
right there on the
know.
curb?
That would be so cool. So now it's during school hours. He's supposed to be at school and he's selling newspapers. And it's also local. So we have that little local tie-in there.
And he's in front of a cigar shop. So that's a real kind of
Oh,
adult thoroughfare, you know?
yeah.
Um, yeah.
Oh, I love that point. That's great. Okay. What do you guys observe on this photo?
There's one boy in the back, but the rest, or maybe two boys, but the rest are girls, and they have such precious looks on their faces, even the ones that look kind of angry or stubborn. But they definitely know they're having their picture taken. Obviously, this is a staged one. They have they look sort of well dressed. They're holding their hands. It kind of is a soft kind of presentation. Uh, they all have shoes on. They don't look like they're in bad shape. So I'm wondering if I'm wondering what kind of message this is supposed to be sending.
So,
Oh,
yeah,
but
those
nobody
are
looks
all
over
great.
15. Yeah,
Hmm.
they're all young.
This is his caption on this one. The the exact time we see the location, we see what this one have what mill it is. The chat's covering it. Yeah, what mill it is, that it's noon hour and they're maybe on break, but because they're taking a picture, but maybe they're not on break, they're still there. Do they get a lunch? I don't
Right. Do they
know.
even get a break?
Right, right. Do they get a break? Um, yeah, I like all of those observations and reflections. They're so good. My favorite thing about this photo is this guy in the middle doing the chin thing.
Again, nobody looks over 15, just like in the last picture. But this time they're all boys and they all look like they're ready for a fight or they're trying to be super cool or they look a little bit less posed, a little bit more candid, kind of there is a little bit more action feel to this one, and they look dirtier than the girls did. They all have hats on.
They do all have hats on. So this one's at a Knoxville cotton mill. So again, we have that local connection. There's not much to this caption, I don't believe. They're
What's a
Doffer boys.
what's a doffer boy?
Oh, I put it,
I feel like I've
I
looked
looked it
this up
up.
before.
I looked it up. Elizabeth, do you remember? Oh, she's not here.
Oh, I'm gonna look it up, don't worry.
It's in the newsletter.
Someone who removes bobbins or spindles.
Oh, yes. So they would be like the pictures that you see with the people standing on the machinery at the like textile mills, replacing the things. That's what
So
they would be doing.
yeah, apparently that was a really dangerous job.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Ah, excuse me. Aha. Okay. So, what do we observe about this photo?
They look happy
Yeah, they look
and
happy.
they're outside in front of a building that doesn't look like a factory to me. Lots of clean clothes, but lots of bare feet.
Yes, all of the bare feet.
They're all white, but there's a mixture of boys and girls and a mixture of ages within the kids.
So this one has a really long title, but what Heinz is saying in this picture is this is a school. So one, Heinz is very good with power of place. If it's in a factory, he captures the factory setting and the people. So it's at a school. He's saying that school here is mandatory, that if the kids don't work, there's a deputy acts as a truant officer. The parents usually send their kids to school. Like these kids are well kept. They have a good education going for them. And that's what he's looking at and trying to convey through this photo.
Oh, I observe a very, very large sack.
Very, very,
You could fit at least three kids in there.
yeah.
And this looks it's just one kid to focus on, unlike the
Mm-hmm.
other ones. And this kid looks sad. And it's kind of a bleak landscape. And the kid's actually at work.
So I think this one is the most um emotional for me because in his caption, this child is he says the full name of the little girl in the photo. He says her age. She's 10 years old and she's carrying a sack that holds 50 pounds. She probably weighs 50 pounds, maybe a little more, but and she picks up to 150 pounds of cotton per day. So, this is also a great one to observe, reflect, and question. But also you can have I think with this one would be a great activity for students to maybe have images of things that weigh 50 pounds or have a slideshow and have them guess the weight. And so they can be like, oh, like that's this little girl is obviously working very, very hard every single day. And it's also something they can relate to because of the age. So, oh yeah, what state that it's from? Um, it's from Oklahoma. That's a good one too. Thank you. That's all that I have.
Well, thank you so much, Ashley. Again, I think the child labor images are always ones that are so thought-provoking, and I think again, great sources to use with students to think about progressive era, to think about the changes that are happening in the early part of the 20th century, and then for them to think about how the life of children has changed in this country. And where that's happened, and where there's been progress, and where we can still continue to improve the lives of our kids. So with that, we're going to wrap stuff up. Let me pull up my PowerPoint here. And I don't know why it kicked me out of presentation mode earlier. All right, so again, if you are looking for any of the materials shared today, including Ashley's PowerPoint, we'll get that posted. Those will be in the album for the Digging In series and our newsletter. You, of course, if you're interested in receiving PD credit for either being with us today or for watching this recording, there is a short survey you can complete, and we will then send out PD forms. We generate those manually. And Elizabeth is currently the person who has been checking these for me and getting those sent out. She's doing that about once a week. So if you don't get your certificate via email in about a week, just touch base with us and we will get that to you. You can also, if you would like, sign up for next month's webinar. We will be meeting on Thursday, November the 14th. And I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, we are going to be focusing on social studies methods next month. Is that right? Or do we have that backwards?
I think so.
So that is the plan. So we will be doing, if you're thinking about again those historical thinking skills, if you're thinking about the socialist practice standards for our Tennessee teachers who've heard us talk about those a lot over the years, these will be things that we will be highlighting, and of course also getting a chance to highlight some of our current projects that are happening in schools of education and focusing on how pre-service teachers are learning about using primary sources in social studies methods.
And it's actually November the 13th, but it is
Oh,
Thursday.
my bad. Thank you.
Mhm.
So, with that, I'm going to close it out for today. Thank you guys so very much for joining us, and we hope to see you again next month.